Elias had always figured love was like the bayous back home. Twisted, murky, full of gators waiting to snap if you waded too deep. But Jack Harlan? He was a goddamn iceberg floating into Elias's sleepy corner of post-war America. All sharp edges and unspoken frost. The kind of man who made the jukebox in the corner diner skip a beat just by walking in. It was 1946, and the world was still shaking off the dust of Europe and the Pacific, vets stumbling home with purple hearts pinned to their chests like scarlet letters. Elias, 25 and scraping by as a mechanic in this godforsaken stretch of Baton Rouge, had seen his share of them. Hollow-eyed boys turned men, nursing beers and ghosts at the VFW hall. But Jack? He didn't nurse anything. He devoured it. Whiskey like it was mother's milk, silence like it was armor. Elias first laid eyes on him in the dim haze of O'Malley's bar, that sticky-floored joint where the air smelled of stale peanuts and regret, the kind of place where secrets fermented like moonshine. Elias was wiping down the counter, his hands black with engine grease he could never quite scrub out, when the door swung open with a groan that echoed the weight of the man stepping through. Jack Harlan stood there, 6'2" of coiled wire and faded khaki. His duffel bag slung over one shoulder like it held the bones of his dead battalion. His face was a chisel's work. High cheekbones, a nose broken once too often, eyes the color of storm clouds over the Gulf, gray and impenetrable. He didn't scan the room like the other vets, hunting for familiar faces or free rounds. No, he zeroed in on the empty stool at the far end of the bar, dropped his bag with a thud that silenced the low hum of conversation, and sat like he was claiming territory in no man's land. "Whiskey neat," he said, voice low and gravelly, the kind that rumbled from a chest scarred by shrapnel Elias wouldn't learn about for weeks. "No please, no thanks, just an order," delivered like a bullet from a .45. Elias poured it without a word, sliding the glass across scarred oak. Their fingers brushed for a split second. Jack's calloused, ice-cold, and something sparked in Elias's gut, a flicker he chalked up to the cheap bourbon he'd snuck a sip of earlier. "Rough day?" Elias asked, because that's what you did in places like this. Tossed out bait, hoping for a nibble. Jack didn't bite. He knocked back the shot in one go, the column of his throat working like a piston, then fixed Elias with a stare that could freeze the Mississippi. "Every day's rough when you're breathing." Then he turned away, staring into the amber dregs as if they held dispatches from the front lines he'd left behind. Elias felt dismissed, like a private caught slacking, but damn if it didn't stir something restless in him. Back then, Elias was no stranger to the shadows himself. Raised in a shotgun house on the edge of the quarter, with a daddy who drank himself into the grave after Pearl Harbor and a mama who prayed rosaries for sins she never named, Elias had learned early to bury his truths deep. The war had taken his older brother, shipped him off to Iwo Jima in a uniform that came home folded in a telegram. Elias had dodged the draft with a bum knee from a childhood fall, but guilt gnawed at him like termites in Cyprus. He fixed Fords and Chevys by day, poured rotgut by night, and in the quiet hours, when the bayou whispered secrets to the cicadas, he let his mind wander to the forbidden. Soft touches in back alleys, stolen glances at the rough trade who drifted through town like smoke. Jack became a fixture. Same stool every night after that. Same ritual. Whiskey, silence, stare. Elias started leaving the bottle within reach, no charge after the first pour, because what was a buck when a man's soul was cracking? He'd catch himself watching, tracing the way Jack's dog tags glinted under the neon buzz, the faint tremor in his hand when he lit a lucky strike. Rumors trickled in like rainwater. Jack Harlan, sergeant in the 101st Airborne, screaming eagles, jumped into Normandy on D-Day, pulled shrapnel from his own thigh with a bayonet while his squad bled out in the hedgerows. Decorated, they said, but carried it like a curse. Cold as a foxhole in Bastogne, wouldn't crack a smile for the nurses who fawned over him stateside. Elias wanted to thaw him, God help him, but every probe, "What outfit were you with?" or "Ever missed the chow back home?" bounced off like ricochet. One night, after closing, Elias lingered, flipping chairs onto tables while Jack nursed his last pour. The jukebox crooned Billie Holiday, her voice a velvet knife through the smoke. "You gonna tell me your story, soldier, or do I gotta guess?" Elias said, half joking, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag that smelled of spilled beer. Jack's head snapped up, eyes narrowing to slits. "My story's written in blood, kid. Yours ain't ready for the readin'." But there was a crack in the ice, a flicker. His gaze lingered on Elias's mouth a beat too long, then dropped to the faded tattoo on Elias's forearm, a faded anchor from his brief stint in the Merchant Marines. Elias felt heat crawl up his neck, the air thickening like before a squall. He leaned in, elbows on the bar, close enough to smell the whiskey on Jack's breath mingled with something earthier, like cordite and pine from the pines back home. "Try me. I ain't fragile." Jack's laugh was a bark, short and bitter, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he reached out, thumb brushing Elias's wrist where the pulse jumped. "Your trouble, grease monkey. The kind that gets a man court-martialed." The words hung, loaded, and in that moment, the bar faded. The stools, the bottles, the ghosts. And it was just them, two strays in a world that hanged men for less. Weeks blurred into a rhythm of stolen hours. By day, Elias wrestled carburetors under the relentless Louisiana sun, his mind replaying the brush of Jack's thumb like a scratched record. Nights, the bar became their foxhole, words traded like rations. Jack thawed in fits and starts. Stories of foxholes flooded with rain, of buddies lost to sniper fire, of the night he held a dying corporal's hand and whispered lies about home. Told him his girl was waitin', with a white picket fence and a litter of pups. Bullshit, all of it, but it eased him. Jack's voice would roughen then, eyes distant, but he'd always pull back, walls slamming up. Elias shared too, halting at first, about his brother's telegram, the way Mama burned his letters like they were tainted, about the ache in his chest when he saw two sailors tangle in a Pearl Harbor newsreel, their embrace too fierce for brothers in arms. "Makes a man question what God's plan is," Elias murmured one night, voice low as the bayou's murmur. Jack's hand found his under the bar, fingers lacing tight, calluses scraping like sandpaper on silk. "God's a bastard, Elias. But you're the closest thing to grace I've touched since the beach." Their first kiss happened in the alley behind O'Malley's, rain sheeting down like Judgment Day. Elias had walked Jack out after last call, the vet swaying just enough to lean on him, arms slung heavy across Elias's shoulders. "Can't go home alone tonight," Jack muttered, breath hot against Elias's ear. Home for Jack was a rented room above a pabboy shop, walls thin as promises. But the alley called first, dark, stinking of garbage and possibility. Jack pinned him against the brick, rough and urgent, mouth crashing down like a wave breaking on levees. Elias tasted salt and smoke, Jack's stubble scraping his chin, hands roaming under shirts with the desperation of men who'd stared down death. It was messy, all teeth and gasps, Jack's dog tags cold against Elias's chest as he growled, "Christ, what are you doing to me?" Elias pulled him closer, legs parting to fit the hard line of Jack's hips, whispering, "Making you feel alive, soldier." Finally, they broke apart only when thunder rolled, laughing breathless, soaked to the bone. From there it was fever. Nights in Jack's narrow bed, bodies twisting like kudzu vines, learning maps of scars and size. Jack's touch was reverent at first, fingers tracing Elias's collarbone like braille, but turned fierce under the covers, hips snapping with the rhythm of a man reclaiming what war stole. "Mine," he'd rasp into Elias's neck, and Elias would arch, whispering back, "Always was." But love in 46 Louisiana was a minefield, pocked with tripwires of whispers and stares. They navigated it careful, hands unlinked in daylight, code words for meetups. Parts run at the garage meant alley trysts, extra shift meant Jack's room till dawn. Elias's heart swelled like the river in spring, foolish and full, dreaming of a life beyond the bayou. Maybe Chicago, where the winds whispered freedom, or San Francisco, fog-shrouded and kind to outcasts. Jack listened to these midnight confessions, head on Elias's chest, heartbeat sinking like Morse code. "Sounds like heaven," he'd say, but his eyes held shadows, old wounds festering. Elias chalked it up to the war the way it hollowed men out. He didn't know about the letters, the ones Jack burned in the sink every Sunday, ashes swirling like accusations. Didn't know about Tommy, the corporal from Bastogne, whose ghost lingered in Jack's nightmares, or the promise Jack made over a foxhole grave. "I'll find your brother. Tell him you went quick. Swear on my dog tags." It started unraveling on a sweltering August evening, the kind where the air clung like a fever dream. Elias was under a 39 Plymouth, oil dripping like black tears, when the phone jangled in the shop office. "Harlan residence." A woman's voice drawled, syrup sweet and unfamiliar. Elias froze, rag halfway to his face. "Wrong number," he muttered, but hung up slow, gut twisting. That night at O'Malley's, Jack was late. Unusual, his stool empty like a missing tooth. When he finally slunk in, collar askew, Elias poured the whiskey with shaking hands. "Everything square?" Jack nodded too quick, eyes dodging. "Just family bullshit. Sister from Shreveport, droppin' in unannounced." Elias pressed, gentle as kudzu. "She know about us?" Jack's laugh was glass-shattering. "Hell no, nobody does. And they ain't gonna." The words landed like a slap, but Elias swallowed it, chalking it to fear. They tumbled into bed anyway, bodies frantic, Jack's thrusts punishing, as if to erase the doubt. The lie festered. Elias started noticing. The lipstick smudge on a collar once, faint as a bruise. The way Jack's phone rang at odd hours, voice dropping to murmurs Elias couldn't catch. Paranoia crept in like humidity, thick and unrelenting. One night, after a shift that dragged like chains, Elias tailed him. Foolish, desperate, heart hammering as he parked the truck a block from Jack's boarding house. Jack didn't go up. Instead, he veered into the shadows of the Catholic church lot, slipping into a sleek black sedan that purred like sin. Elias's blood ran cold. He followed at a crawl, headlights off, the sedan winding out to the edge of town, where the bayou gave way to manicured lawns and white-columned mansions, the old money quarter, where whispers of blue blood drowned out cries for justice. The car stopped at a sprawling plantation house, porch lights glowing like false halos. Jack emerged, duffel in hand, greeted by a woman in pearls. Tall, blonde, the kind of Southern belle who'd faint at the sight of a colored boy in the front seat. They embraced, her hand lingering on his chest, and Jack kissed her temple, soft as a vow. Elias's vision tunneled, the world tilting like a bad drunk. He floored it home, tires screaming betrayal, and when Jack knocked hours later, reeking of jasmine and lies, Elias yanked the door open, fists clenched. "Who the fuck is she, Jack? Your sister?" Jack's face drained of color, then hardened to granite. "Elias, listen." But Elias was a storm unleashed, words tumbling like floodwaters. "I saw you, kissing her like she was your goddamn salvation. What am I, then? A wartime fuck? A way to forget the foxholes?" Jack stepped in, hands up like surrendering, but his eyes, those gray storms, flashed lightning. "It's not what you think. She's Margaret, from before. Family expects you to marry straight and breed heirs while you fuck me in the dark." Elias roared, shoving him back. The room spun, years of buried rage surfacing. His brother's death, Mama's prayers, the world's boot on his neck. Jack grabbed his wrists, pinning him to the wall, breath ragged. "I love you, damn it. You thawed me when nothing else could. But the world's a meat grinder, Elias. One wrong move and we're both chum." Tears burned Elias's eyes, hot as bayou mud. "Then fight for us. Or walk." Jack's grip tightened, then shattered. He released, stepping back like Elias was a live grenade. "I can't. Not yet." The door clicked shut behind him, soft as a coffin lid, leaving Elias in the hollow echo of what might have been. The days after Jack's departure stretched like taffy pulled too thin, sticky with regret and the acrid tang of what-ifs. Elias threw himself into the garage, hands buried in engines that never lied, their guts straight forward where hearts twisted like wrenches. O'Malley's became a no-go zone. He quit on the spot, telling old man O'Malley the smoke was killing his lungs. But really, it was the ghost of Jack's laugh echoing off the rafters. Whispers followed, of course, small-town telegraph, faster than Western Union. "That Harlan boy's trouble," folks muttered at the Piggly Wiggly, casting sidelong glances at Elias as he stocked his basket with canned beans and denial. Heard he up and left without a word to that bell from the Devereaux place. Elias ignored it, but the barbs stuck, drawing blood in the quiet. He tried dating the ordinary way. Church picnic with Betty Lou from down the road. Her giggles like wind chimes, her touch featherlight and safe. But when she leaned in for a chaste kiss under the oaks, Elias recoiled, tasting phantom whiskey on his tongue. "Sorry, darlin'," he drawled, forcing a smile that cracked like dry earth. "Ain't ready." Truth was, he was ruined. Jack's brand seared into his soul. The curve of his hip, the gravel of his voice murmuring Elias's name like a prayer in the dark. Nights Elias haunted the bayou alone, rod in hand but no bait, staring at the water's black mirror until stars blurred with tears. He'd think of Normandy beaches, not from experience but from Jack's tales. Red sand churned to mud by boots and blood, the sea indifferent as it lapped at the dead. War don't care who you love, Jack had said once, fingers tracing Elias's spine. It takes what it wants. Now, peace felt like the crueler thief, stripping away the foxhole's excuse, leaving only the raw ache of choice. 2 months in, the letter came, postmarked Shreveport, Jack's scrawl jagged as barbed wire. Elias's hands shook opening it, the envelope crisp against his grease-stained fingers. Elias can't write much. Margaret's folks got plans. Big ones. Wedding in the spring, they say. Feels like jumping off a cliff blindfolded. Miss you like a limb gone gangrene. Remember the night by the levee? Your laugh when the gator splashed us? That's my North Star now. Hold on. J. Elias crumpled it, then smoothed it flat, reading till the words blurred. Hold on. To what? Crumbs from a table set for another. He burned it in the shop's oil drum, flames licking high, but the smoke curled into his lungs, choking him with memory. Fall deepened, leaves turning blood red like war poppies, and Elias drove north one weekend, restless as a caged coonhound. New Orleans called, the Crescent City's pulse a bomb for his bruised heart. Jazz spilling from doorways, absinthe green as envy, the anonymity of crowds where a man could breathe without prying eyes. He holed up in a Frenchman Street dive, the kind with velvet curtains and passwords whispered at the door. There, in the haze of saxophone wails and gin fumes, he found solace in strangers. A dockworker with hands like hams, rough and kind. A painter whose eyes held Picasso storms. But their touches were echoes, pale imitations that left him hollower. On the third night, nursing a Sazerac in a corner booth, Elias spotted him. Not Jack, but a specter close enough to gut punch. Tall, broad, dog tags peeking from a half-unbuttoned shirt, laughing with a cluster of sailors on leave. Elias's heart lurched, then settled into a dull thud. Not him. Never him again. Back in Baton Rouge, the wedding announcement hit like a depth charge. Society page in the Morning Advocate. Debutante Margaret Devereaux to wed war hero Sergeant John Harlan. Ceremony at St. Louis Cathedral. Photo attached. Jack in a suit too starched for his wild edges. Arm around Margaret's waist, her smile porcelain perfect, his eyes empty, staring past the lens like a man at his own execution. Elias clipped it, pinned it to the garage wall like a target, and for weeks, every swing of his hammer on a dented fender was aimed at that frozen face. Friends, real ones like old Remy from the docks, tried pulling him out. Come fishin', Cher. I'll wash it clean. But Elias waved them off, burrowing deeper into solitude, the only companion that didn't demand vows. Winter bit hard that year, frost rhyming the bayou like lace on a widow's veil. Elias woke one December dawn to pounding on his door, the kind that rattled the saints from their frames. He stumbled out in long johns, shotgun half-cocked. Rattlesnakes and drunks you learned to greet both loaded. But it was Jack, snow-dusted and wild-eyed, duffel at his feet like a discarded skin. Elias. One word, a plea wrapped in frostbite. Elias's finger tightened on the trigger, then eased. You got some nerve, Harlan. Showin' up like a bad penny after sellin' your soul up the river. Jack stepped forward, boots crunching ice, hands out like parley flags. I didn't sell nothin'. Tried to. God, I tried, for the house, the name, the lie that keeps a man breathin' in this world. But the ring on her finger felt like chains in a POW camp. His voice cracked, breath clouding the air, and Elias saw it then. The hollows under his eyes, deeper than foxholes. The tremor in his jaw, not from cold but collapse. They stood there, steam rising between them like unspoken accusations, until Elias lowered the gun. Get in, for you freeze your sorry ass off. Inside, the cabin was a monk's cell, cot, stove, walls papered in faded newsprint of victory parades. Jack shed his coat, shivering like a wet dog, and Elias shoved a tin mug of chicory coffee into his hands. Start talkin', and it better be gospel, or I'll throw you back to the wolves. Jack sank onto the cot, elbows on knees, staring into the black brew like it held absolution. Margaret's good people. Knew me from debutante balls, Before the war turned me inside out. Her daddy's got pull, senator, oil money. Thinks I'm the all-American boy. Come home to plant flags and babies. I let it ride after you, after us. Figured it'd bury the want, make me straight as a ruler. He laughed, bitter as burnt rice. But standin' at that altar? Thou stickin' in my throat like barbed wire? All I saw was you, Elias. Your eyes in the moonlight, that scar on your hip from the levee fight. I bolted, told her it was cold feet, jitters. She cried, but her folks, they'll hunt me like a deserter. Elias paced, floorboards creaking under his boots, heart a war drum. Part of him wanted to deck Jack, paint his pretty face black and blue for the lies. The nights Elias had curled alone, Bayou mocking his sobs. But another part, the fool, the lover, ached to pull him close, map the new lines sorrow had carved. And now? What, you think you can just waltz back, play house like nothing happened? World's still grindin' men like us under heel, Jack. One wrong whisper, and we're done. Tarred, feathered, or worse. Jack rose, closing the distance, hands framing Elias's face, thumbs rough on cheekbones. I know. Felt it every night, dreamin' of you while she slept beside me. But runnin' ain't livin'. Neither's pretendin'. I want out for real. With you. We head west. San Fran maybe. Where the fog hides sins and folks like us got corners to breathe in. The kiss that followed was no alley frenzy, but a slow unfurling, tentative as spring thaw. Elias tasted salt. Tears, not rain, and pulled back, searching those gray eyes for deceit. Finding only raw plea, he surrendered, bodies colliding like driftwood on the current. They made love by the stove's glow, fire crackling counterpoint to gasps and groans. Jack's hands worshipful, mapping Elias like sacred ground. Never letting go again, Jack vowed into sweat-damp skin, and Elias believed him, whispering back, swear it on your tag, soldier. Dawn found them tangled, coffee cold, plans sketched on the walls in charcoal dreams. Truck fixed for the road, jobs lined up in the city by the bay, a life stitched from stolen threads. But peace was a fragile levee, and trouble lapped at its edges. Jack's mail started arriving. Perfumed envelopes from Margaret, postmarks frantic, then furious. Come back, Jackie. Daddy's lawyers are asking questions. Elias burned them too, but the smoke carried omens. Then Remy showed up one gray afternoon, face like thunder. Heard from a buddy in Nolans. Harlan's fiancé's kin got Pinkerton sniffin' around. Say he's a thief made off with family silver or some such lie. But it's you thereafter, share. Words out about the bar nights. The friendship too close for comfort. Elias's blood iced. Jack's arm tightening around his waist from the kitchen doorway. Let him come, Jack growled. But fear flickered in his eyes. Old foxhole instinct. The kind that saved lives but broke spirits. They packed that night, duffel stuffed with essentials. Elias's tools, Jack's tags, a road map folded like a promise. The truck coughed to life under a sickle moon. Headlights cutting fog as they fled west. Bayou shrinking in the rearview like a bad memory. Highway 90 unspooled. Radio crooning Hank Williams' laments. And for stolen miles, it felt like freedom, wind whipping hair. Jack's hand on Elias's thigh, thumb circling lazy eights. They talked then. Really talked. Jack unburdening the Bastogne ghost. Tommy's hand gone limp in his. The promise that chained him to silence. Swore I'd protect his kin, write the letters. Margaret's brother was Tommy's CO. Thought Maureen in would square it. Elias squeezed his hand, voice thick. You carried enough, Jack. Time to lay it down. Stops came at diners where waitresses poured coffee without questions. Motels with neon signs buzzing vacancy, like invitations to sin. But the past was a hound with a nose for blood. In Texas panhandle dust, a black sedan tailed them for 50 miles, vanishing at a crossroads like a bad dream. Jack's knuckles whitened on the dash. They're closin' in. Elias pushed harder, pedal to metal, heart racing with the engine's roar. By New Mexico, paranoia peaked. Jack jumping at shadows, Elias scanning mirrors for the glint of pursuit. They holed up in a Taos adobe, borrowed from a vet buddy of Remy's, walls thick as secrets. There, in the high desert chill, love deepened roots. Nights under star-pricked skies, body slow and sure, Jack's whispers turning to poetry. You're my ceasefire, Elias. The white flag I never raised. Elias traced his scars, silver rivers on bronze skin. And you're my victory march. Spring crept in with dogwood blooms, and San Francisco beckoned like El Dorado. Hills rolling to the sea, cable cars clanging freedom's song. They arrived fog-shrouded. The Golden Gate, a rusted promise arching overhead. Jack found work at the docks, loading crates with the rhythm of waves. Elias apprenticed at a garage in the Castro, hands clean of bayou grime. Evenings, they wandered North Beach, jazz clubs pulsing with bebop heartbeats, hands brushing in crowds that didn't stare. It wasn't perfect, whispers still slithered, jobs lost to policy. But it was theirs, a patchwork quilt of stolen glances and midnight vows. One fog-laced night, atop Twin Peaks, city lights sprawling like fallen stars, Jack dropped to one knee. Not with a ring, but his dog tags, chain glinting. Marry me, Elias. Not legal, not church-blessed, but ours. Swear on these, on the blood they soaked. Tears stung, Elias pulling him up into an embrace fierce as gales. Yes, God, yes. They sealed it with salt and sea, the world below indifferent, their hearts finally at ease. Yet shadows lingered. A letter arrived months later, forwarded from Baton Rouge. Margaret, penitent, enclosing a check. For the pain, found my own peace. Let him go. Jack burned it, but not before Elias saw the postscript. Tell Elias I'm sorry. War takes lovers, but love reclaims. They wept then, for what was lost, what was gained. A human coda to their saga, grace in the wreckage. Years folded like well-worn maps. A house in the Eichler suburbs, garden blooming riotous. Adoptions whispered of, dreams of a family beyond blood. Jack's frost melted to warmth, his laugh booming at barbecues with neighbors who asked no questions. Elias, once adrift, found anchor in the man who'd stormed his shores. In the end, love wasn't the bayou's twist or war's straight shot. It was the road between, potholed and true, leading home.